Hello, everyone. Hope you've been enjoying the NewsLitCamp so far. We're going to let folks trickle in since we had a little break between the sessions. Awesome. Please feel free to use the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, maybe what you teach. That's always interesting for us to see where people are tuning in from. And it also helps our panelist, Pam, know really how to kind of guide what standards, what questions might be the most useful. Awesome. So we'll let folks come in. Greetings from Las Vegas. Welcome, welcome.
Hello,
All
Joey.
right. Yeah. So my name is Alexa Volland. I'm NLP Senior Manager of Educator Professional Learning. I want to welcome you all to the third session in today's Newslit Camp. If you've never attended a Newslit Camp before, this is a day where we at the News Literacy Project bring together educators as well as practicing journalists to discuss news literacy and journalism, but also really with the goal to take all of this real world experience and expertise and transform it into classroom learning. So if you caught those first two sessions and you're asking yourself, how do I bring this into the classroom? Where do I start? You came to the right session. This will be amazing for you. Our framework for teaching news literacy can be used for integrating news literacy into an already existing curriculum or can be used as the basis for creating a standalone course. So this will be extremely valuable. Before I turn things over to Pam, just a few webinar guidelines since this is a webinar. You won't be able to unmute yourself to ask a question, but we really encourage you to use the chat, especially if you see a classroom connection to something that Pam says. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues. For specific questions about the framework, whatever Pam is talking about, please use the Q&A button just so we can keep those all in one place. Pam, you want to move to the next slide? Great. If you're not familiar, the News Literacy Project, we are a nonpartisan education nonprofit, and we create materials and resources to give to educators as well as the general public to help folks become better informed, more engaged, and empowered individuals in our extremely complicated media landscape. And just one of the ways we do that is through professional learning like today. But now I'm pleased to kind of introduce my friend and my colleague, Pam Brunskill. Pam, I know you have a intro slide right next. Perfect. Pam is the Senior Manager of Education Design at NLP. She joined NLP in 2021 after 20 years of experience in education and education publishing. She's worked as a teacher, as a literacy coach, is also an adjunct instructor at Bloomsburg University, Bucknell University, and the University of Buffalo. Additionally, she has authored 5 books for the education market and co-authored Information Literacy, Separating Fact from Fiction. So you all are in excellent hands. There's really no one better to talk about the framework for teaching news literacy than Pam, really the mastermind behind these documents. So Pam, I'm going to turn things over to you. I'm going to turn my camera off and I'll be in the chat helping to drop some additional links. All right, thanks so much, Pam.
Sounds great. Thank you, Alexa. As Alexa said, yes, my background is in education. I'm so excited to be here today to share 2 of our resources focused on long-range planning of news literacy instruction. And also hello to all my friends that I am seeing in the chat. Some repeats like Kate, love to see you again. And I saw a Rochester, New York person. I'm from Buffalo, so go Bills, although it's very sad that our season has ended, but we will push on. There's always next year. Today, we're going to focus on news literacy. And I have 3 main objectives for you today. The first one is going to be identify elements from the News Literacy Project's framework for teaching news literacy that you can use in your educational setting. And I have here a bird's eye view of the landscape because that's pretty much what our framework is. It gives you that overview of the whole landscape of what news literacy encompasses. I think of it in terms of if you are an individual teacher. I saw a social studies teacher, if you are the only educator in your district or in your school focusing on teaching news literacy, this is the document for you. You're going to look at how do I create a good, big overarching unit plan. It's also good for within grade bands. So if several people are teaching in 6th grade or 9th grade, you work together using that document. Then the next objective is going to be assess how your implementation of news literacy standards fits in with other educational settings. So if you are a curriculum coordinator, or if you are looking to scaffold news literacy in your district from pre-K through 12, this is the document for you. It's very detail oriented. It gives you a nitty gritty of steps you can take to build news literacy across your district. And then the final objective for today is I want you to leave by choosing at least one element from either document to incorporate into your work. So you are leaving with something to take with you. Happy Friday. All right. So I see a lot of you are already sharing your roles. If you haven't yet, can you please share what you teach or what your role is in education? And then maybe what you hope to get out of today's session. And I'm reading the chat as it comes in. So I'll give you a few seconds. Yeah, K through 8. So you're going to want both documents. Librarians are going to want both documents. Lots of librarians, researcher, cancer prevention. Wow, that's cool. Civics education program. Okay, so you're going to want both documents. High school teacher, you'll probably definitely want the first, maybe the second. Middle school, you'll definitely want the first, maybe the second. Graduate assistant, University of Georgia. Arts literacy subject area. Media literacy Erasmus project in Turkey. That's cool. All right, lots of different ways we are using news literacy and hope to use news literacy and teach news literacy in our world. So I think you are here. Many of you have come to our sessions earlier in the day, and we recognize that we use information to form opinions. These opinions form our decisions, which will eventually become our actions. But what happens when those actions are based on inaccurate information? The importance of news, right, is to inform us. So now we've got misinformation, any false, inaccurate, misleading, or incorrect information, regardless of the intent to deceive, right? It's not always clear to figure out which is mis or disinformation, but the point is misinformation and the lack of news literacy have created an existential threat to our democracy. As a result, there's an urgent need for news literacy for people of all ages. So when our regular trajectory is impacted by misinformation, our entire trajectory changes. We have two documents that I'm going to share with you today to help raise our students and scaffold knowledge of news literacy so we can try to navigate our information landscape well. All right, so the first document is called the Framework for Teaching News Literacy, and the second one is the Grade Band Expectations for News Literacy. We're going to focus first on the framework. And Tori or Alexa, can one of you put in the chat the link for the Framework for Teaching News Literacy? Some of you may have seen this. We've had it on our website for over a year now. Thank you. Because it's a very large document, I just took some screenshots and I'm going to focus on just little bits of the framework, but you'll get this link to this document and it will be in the resources document that you'll get at the end. So the Framework for Teaching News Literacy. It provides standards, essential questions, and knowledge or skills objectives, along with performance tasks, learning activities. It uses understanding by design principles. We actually did work with Jay McTighe on this. If you're familiar with understanding by design, it's start with the end in mind, right? So where do we want our students to go? And then you work backwards to plan learning activities and design your resources. The goals are designed around NLP standards for news literacy, and I'll share with those. We have 5 core standards I'll share with you in a minute. And what we're doing is we're looking for transfer, meaning, and acquisition with this blueprint for curriculum development. It uses 3 stages of design, just like understanding by design. and we can use it to integrate into existing curricula or as standalone units. Again, the district's looking to customize their learning. Districts, what we expect you to do, we expect you to customize your learning in ways that best suit individual needs, yet support higher level thinking and skills. So what we have is this blueprint for you. Take it, try it, and then adapt it if it doesn't fit perfectly with what you need. All right, so those goals, right? Those 5 core standards, you're going to find those right here, those established goals. They're on the very first page of our framework. And let's take a look at what they are. The first standard is students distinguish news from other types of information and can recognize both traditional and non-traditional advertisements. Think of this as zoning information. Is what you're looking at, is it news? Is it opinion? Is it propaganda, raw information? What is it? That's the first step in evaluating information. The second one is going to be students acknowledge the importance of the First Amendment in American democracy and a free press to an informed public. So this is just recognizing that news and journalism is important as the fourth estate in American democracy. Standard 3, students understand why professional and ethical standards are necessary to produce quality journalism, and they can apply understanding of those standards to discern credible information and sources for themselves. Those of you who attended our first 2 sessions, all of the information about how local newsrooms work and questions journalists are encountering and working through, that's all going to go under standard 3. It's thinking like a journalist. In order to evaluate information and determine if it's credible or not, you're going to want to be able to think like a journalist. Those of you familiar with disciplinary literacy, thinking like a historian, think like a mathematician, that's going to be thinking like a journalist. So all you disciplinary literacy folks out there, our whole way of thinking is disciplinary literacy, and standard 3 really is about how we do that. Standard 4, students demonstrate increased critical habits of mind, including effective verification skills and the ability to detect misinformation and faulty evidence. So that little slide I shared with you before about how misinformation changes our trajectory, most people think about identifying misinformation as the news literacy skill, and that is absolutely important. And that's where our news literacy naivety, right, comes out. But in order to evaluate misinformation and evaluate those news literacy and information that's in front of you, you need to make sure you get standards 1, 2, and 3 before you can really get to those skills. And then our 5th one, quite possibly the most important one, is the civic responsibility. Students express and exercise civic responsibility by seeking, sharing, and producing credible information as effective participants in a democracy. That's that ultimate goal, right? We need to make sure not only students understand what is credible, but then they can act on it. All right, so let's do a little quiz here. I want you to determine what standard this is. So I'm giving you just a sample objective. Understand the importance of a free press and interact with news and other information in ways that promote engaged participation in civic life. Which standard, and I'll go back, which standard addresses the idea of the importance of a free press? So I'll go back. And then once you've got it, once you think you've got it, put it in the chat. And I see lots of people getting it. Standard 2 is correct. That's the one that deals with the importance of a free press. All right. And my beloved Buffalo Bills, this was taken in 2021. The original photo came from Stephon Diggs after our heartbreaking loss to the Kansas City Chiefs with 13 seconds to go. And then last year when Cincinnati, yeah, go Bills. Last year when Cincinnati lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, ESPN posted this image, which I guess they could do it again this last weekend, but thankfully they didn't, where they swapped out Stephon Diggs for Joe Burrows. It's the exact same picture, but they changed the person. So when we have the objective of determine the accuracy of information as well as the credibility of the source of that information, let's pretend that was one of our objectives. What standard are we hitting? And I'll go back. I see someone already got it. Which one deals with trying to identify misinformation. One more person, then I'll move on. All right, you got it. Standard 4, right? If you are actively looking and critically evaluating your images and thinking about, is that real? You're activating standard 4. Next one's a little trickier. All right, let's pretend your objective is use the standards of authoritative fact-based journalism in deciding what to trust, what to share, and what to act on. And I'm warning you, it is tricky. And I'll go back so you can see those standards. I'm not sure if it's because I warned you it was tricky, but yeah. Okay, perfect. Oh, man, just when I was about to give it to you. Yeah, you are correct. It is 3 and 5. And so those of you saying 3, you are correct. And those of you saying 5, it is correct. And those of you saying 3 and 5, it is correct. Because when you are activating students' knowledge of what goes into standards-based news, you're working with standard 3. But when we're talking about what to share and what to act on, now we're going with standard 5. That's that civic responsibility. All right, so let's go back into this document and talk about what all this other stuff means. Once you've determined your goals, which of the standards or all 5 standards you want to address, you need to identify your desired results for transfer, meaning, and acquisition. So transfer, think of this as the long range goals. And I want to show you, let's go with one example, right? Students will be able to independently use their learning to distinguish news from other types of information. If we're looking at standard 1, that's that zoning info. Oh, I see a question. Why not 4.2? Sorry, I'll go back. Why not 4.2? 4 is really the skills just in terms of credibility, determining it's the if you're looking at misinformation or determining arguments, evaluating arguments and evidence. That's what standard 4 is going to be. But you know what? When we get into that grade band doc, it'll become a little bit clearer what goes with what. All right, so transfer, meaning, and acquisition. Let's look at that first standard. If we decide we want to focus on zoning information, what would be our desired results for a transfer? So we have examples here for each of our 5 standards for transfer, meaning, and acquisition. You choose the ones that fit with your class and your needs. Here's one example. Students will be able to independently use their learning to distinguish news from other types of information. That's that long range goal. What will people do when they're out of school, when they're 30, 50, 80? Meaning, this is going to be an example. It's your enduring understandings and essential questions. Students will understand that different types of information exist for different purposes. In what ways do news and information shape society? They will keep considering what distinguishes facts from opinions, and why does the distinction matter for productive discourse? Those are your higher level thinking. In acquisition, these are going to be your knowledge and skills. Students will know how journalists determine which events and issues to cover in a given news cycle. Students will be skilled at differentiating information based on its primary purpose among 6 main info zones. Again, these are examples we have created for you. They work, they're fantastic. You can take them as is, but you can also adapt them for your school's needs. All right, so next, you've identified your goals, you've identified your desired results. Now you have to find your evidence. Think of it as your assessments, right? What evidence will show what students understand the unit goals? We have performance tasks. We recommend developing performance tasks and rubrics for your students that fit their unique needs. So again, we have some that we include here for each of the standards. And then we also have a pre-assessment that's built into Checkology. If you are familiar with Checkology, if you're not, check it out. It's free and it's fantastic. And we have built in a pre-assessment that assesses key understanding and skills from the framework. your students can take it before they use Checkology, and then they take it after, and it's built in. You can share with your administration, right? Here's my students' progress. And supplementary evidence, you can create your own tests, quizzes, prompts, work samples, and observations, of course, as well as have students self-assess and reflect. All right. Of course, you are the teacher, you are your master of your classroom, you know what works, so pick and choose what works for you. Likewise, once you have your assessment goals, right, or assessments decided, you're going to pick and choose your learning, your learning experiences. How are you going to hook your students? We for the framework, I have outlined all 19 Checkology lessons here and how they would fit with the standards. So you can see the coding here. Info zones, our lesson on info zones, going to obviously fit with standard 1. What is news fits with both standard 1 and standard 3. And I bolded standard 3 because we felt it fit with standard 3 a little bit better, but you could use it for both. And we have example objectives here for each of those lessons. We also have additional learning activities like our newsroom to classroom program, which everything is free, which would connect you with a practicing journalist to come in and speak to your students. And you would just, of course, tie that into your objectives, the goals that you have identified. And here's in one slide, all 19 examples, or just an overview of our 19 lessons on Checkology. So you would pick and choose the ones that fit with what you are teaching. I saw some of you were doing world history, so our editorial cartooning one would fit very, very nicely. And then practicing quality journalism, I thought I saw somebody here was a journalism teacher. I don't think we have any science people, but making sense of data and math, math teachers. Harm and distress is another great one for journalism. Our English teachers I saw evaluating science-based claims, librarians, all of these. All right. And here, if you are not familiar, this is just one example of how a embedded assessment is in our lesson. So students would pick and choose after getting some explicit instruction from a subject matter expert. They have to choose which one of the mix and match. All right, before we move on to the grade band expectations, do we have any questions about this overview document, the framework? And I know I threw a lot at you, right? But it's just an overview, and I know you're smart. I was an educator. You get time on your own with that document to plan, and it will make sense to you. But initial questions. And I'll just give it another 15 seconds because I know my wait time. Grade levels are for Checkology, those lessons are intended for grades 6 through 12. Though we do have college instructors using them, we are told all the time. And some of our lessons, not all of them, but some of those lessons are also appropriate for upper elementary. Any other questions about, are the links copyable? I'm not sure which links these, like in the chat. Yes, they should be. I think you just highlight them and move them, or just click on them. If for some reason they're not, please send us an email at the end and we'll make sure you get the links. All right. Any other questions about framework before I move on to grade bands? Okay. All right. So here's our first objective. Reflect on the framework for teaching news literacy. Oh, I can't resend those links, but I think Alexa or Tori can. So At this point, you don't have to do it in the chat, but if you will, and if you have a notebook or somewhere you are taking notes for yourself, can you identify elements from the News Literacy Project's framework for teaching news literacy that you can use in your educational setting? Whether you are, I saw there was a homeschool teacher, if you are a librarian, if you are teaching world history, whatever it is that you are doing in your educational setting, take a minute and make a goal for yourself. What elements can you use? I'm stopping myself from talking because I know you need to concentrate, but this is nerve-wracking. I'm looking at myself and that's it, and I have no idea what else everyone else is doing. Okay. Oh, I was just about to move on. Repeating the question. I'll give you 10 more seconds to identify elements from the News Literacy Project's framework for teaching news literacy that you can use in your educational setting. So what can you take with you from that document? I'll give you 10 seconds and then I'm moving on. Okay. Yeah, it really is. It really is. All right. So now, how do the framework for teaching news literacy and the grade band expectations for news literacy relate? Because they really do connect. You will notice those established goals are the heart of our framework, right? Those 5 core competencies or 5 standards. They are the heart of the grade band expectations. So that, remember, that framework is that bird's eye view, right? This is the landscape. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. How do we develop it? So you'll see standard 1 is going to link to standard 1 in the grade band expectations. And thank you to Alexa or Tori, who just put the grade band expectations for news literacy in the chat. If you haven't clicked on it, please do. This is brand new. You are the very first people to see this document publicly. So excited to share it with you today. We are launching it now. Oh, someone's sending me a heart. Thanks. So, all right, how do we read this document? First, what you're gonna, I'm feeling the love. Thank you. All right, so first, what you're gonna do is notice that expectations are outlined by grade band. You're gonna look at pre-K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. That's the first thing you're gonna notice. Just like if you're familiar with the C3 framework, they develop their expectations by grade band. We do the same thing. Okay, next thing you're going to want to notice is to see how expectations develop for each standard across grade bands, you're going to read horizontally. So if I want to see how a skill develops, I look at pre-K through 2 all the way through 9 to 12, and I'm looking at primary purpose. This is how we can scaffold that development. That's good for, right, our curriculum coordinators. If I am a 6th grade teacher, like I was at one point in my career, I am just going to go to that 6 or 8 grade band and read vertically. So to see the expectations for each grade band, just read vertically. So you pick and choose, how to read it based on your role. All right. The other thing you're going to want to pay attention to is that target symbol. The target symbol indicates the target learning indicator for each learning category. Right? It's going to be bolded. It's going to have that target symbol. I tried to make it super clear, like this is what we want to accomplish. And I do that. If you are, I don't know how many years in education you've been in. Oh, thank you, Christine. But I remember having professional development where we had to determine what was essential in our teaching, what was a reinforcement, and then what was nice to have. And so what we've done here is identified the crucial must-have skills as our target learning indicators. And then pre-K through, like for this example one in info zones, about analyzing information according to primary purpose. That's that main target for info zones for primary purpose. But there's a lot that pre-K through 2 and 3 through 5 can do to scaffold that learning so that it's not all falling on the 6 through 8. And then likewise, 9 through 12, you expand and build on that knowledge, right? So we and I recognize wholeheartedly the importance of early childhood and the early elementary foundation. It's just like when kids come to 6th grade and they're writing, it's because of all the attention paid in the early grades, and we recognize that. So we have designed this grade band expectations to give you a roadmap on what to teach and how, but we're not telling you who needs to teach it or when, right? That's up to you and your school. Thank you, and your school districts, whether it's the social studies teacher, whether it's the ELA teacher, whether it's the 4th grade teacher. It's whatever fits with what you are already doing. We expect you to be able to, embed it. Okay, so students who demonstrate mastery of the target indicator meet the main goal for that learning category. All other indicators scaffold or extend those targets. Here's a blown up view of just primary purpose. What do you notice? I kind of already just said it, but maybe you'll find something else. What stands out to you? It doesn't have to be earth shattering, but if someone could please put something in the chat that they notice. Yay, thank you, Deidre. Target indicator is identified, hopefully very, very clearly. This is what you must at some point, if you want to teach news literacy about info zones, right? This is what you want to accomplish. Thanks, Deidre. Anyone else? Clear through lines, leading to and beyond the target. Yes, you need to build over time and across grades if we are going to do this right. It's not one person in charge of everything. I know there are some librarians I've spoken to who are just like, it can't be all me. You're right. It can't. It shouldn't be. Yes, separation of news and entertainment. That's a skill we definitely need to help our students with. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Anything else? Okay. So let's look at 2 of them now. Right? We've got standard 2, and this is a little harder to read. So maybe don't, if you can't read it, just look at the formatting. What do you notice? If we're looking at 2 of the learning categories for standard 2. This is about free press and the First Amendment. What's different about what we just looked at? Good. Yeah, 2 targets are in B, right? So 3 to 5 has 1 skill. So sometimes you're going to find 1 target indicator for a category, and sometimes you're going to have 2, and sometimes it's in 6 through 8, and sometimes it's in 9 through 12. We have identified where we think it fits most logically, but again, based on your students, you may have to change who gets the target indicator. I think we only actually, I know we only have 1 target indicator in 3 through 5, and that's in standard 3. We don't have any target indicators in pre-K through 2. They're all for scaffolding that learning. But again, you have to decide what's right for you and your school. Okay. Let's look at if we're now reading vertically. Let's pretend we're 6th grade teachers. What do you notice? Higher level thinking skills. Yep. Vertical scaffolding. Yep. Yep. So we have our younger grades leading up to it, our older grades expanding on it. Our target target indicator is going to be bolded, and if it's not a target indicator, it means it's either scaffolding or extending prior knowledge. Perfect. All right, we also have through lines on this grade band document. So at the end of each standard where we talk about how the skills progress in pre-K through 12, we have one through line for each of the standards. So here's standard through lines for S1, S2, and S3. I'll just read the first two. So through line for S1, different types of information are created in different ways for different purposes, meanings, and effects. Standard 2, the First Amendment protects responsible civic discourse and must be actively protected and maintained. Watchdogs, including a free press, protect the public interest and are a cornerstone of democracy. Creating and sharing credible information empowers individuals and invigorates democracy. So let's think about what are the purpose of, of through lines. Totally fine. What do you think those purpose, why did we add those through lines? Yep. Kate, you are on fire today. Continuity is correct, right? It's just what shows through all, yeah, it emphasizes the big ideas. What big ideas progress through all grades, whether they are part of that target learning indicator or not. It is now time for you to take some time to reflect on the grade band expectations for teaching news literacy. Can you assess how your implementation of news literacy standards fits in with other educational settings, right? So if you are a sixth grade teacher, how does that relate to what happens in pre-K through 2? If you are a curriculum coordinator, how does this relate to your librarians, right? How does what you do relate to others? Take a minute. If you have a notebook, write it down. If you are in your car, just think about it, right? Don't get into an accident. But think about this for a second. How will your implementation of news literacy standards fit in with other educational settings? And 10 more seconds. All right, I'm going to move on unless somebody types in the chat, like, please wait. It's super hard because I can't see anyone. I don't know what you're doing, but I hope you were able to write something down. Okay, so moving forward, here's what I want you to know. This document needs to be dynamic and evolve according to the changes in the information environment. And it's going to do so along with your feedback. So please, if you notice, if you start using these documents and something is not clear, or you have an idea of something we've missed, or you want us to just revise in some way, please let me know. I readily accept feedback. So going forward, just realize this is designed to support a district-wide approach to teaching news literacy. Just like the framework, it can be used as is, but we expect you to adapt it to best suit your needs. And again, if you have ideas to make the resource stronger, please let us know. Email info@newslit.org, or you can email me directly, pbrunskill@newslit.org. And I 100% mean that. I really want to hear from you. All right, so do you have any questions about the grade band expectations? I'm going to take that as a no, but if you have some, please put it in the chat or in the Q&A. Thanks, Jason. All right, just a reminder, what news literacy is. A discipline within media literacy focused on specific non-ideological principles in teaching, a nonpartisan focus on specific clear learning standards, a dedication to the First Amendment, and a conviction that a free press is a cornerstone of democracy, an approach that teaches you how to think about the news and information you encounter daily, not what to think, and the ability to determine the credibility of news and other information. These documents will help you build this news literacy with your students. One other resource, oh, I'm sorry, Tori and Alexa, I forgot to share this link, but if you want, we have an infographic about how to teach news in polarizing times for those of you who are in a district that may be facing some pushback. We have some guidelines, and it is included on the resource sheet, I think. All right, wrapping up before I do some like final promotion stuff. Choose at least one element from either doc to incorporate into your work if you haven't done so already. How will you take today's resources? I know it's going to take a lot of time if you are not familiar with them, but you will definitely want to sit down with them and plan out how to use them. So for now, one element that you can incorporate into your work. And once you've identified that one element you want to use, take a look up here. And if you've got your phone on you, you can scan for whenever we have two contests coming up. The first one is called Pitch It 2024. If you are an educator in New York, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Florida, or Texas, your students can enter this contest, and there are prizes for both students and teachers. The link is in the chat. And then the other one is our Changemakers Awards. Always a fun event. Thanks, Cheryl. And then the Changemakers Awards is always a fun event. Nominations open in a couple weeks, February 7th. If you want to either nominate yourself as a teacher or a colleague who is a changemaker, somebody who really advocates for news literacy in the classroom. And we also have Gwen Eiffel Student of the Year Award. So if you have a student you want to nominate, you think that they are really involved in news literacy and making an issue, or not making an issue, making waves and making progress in their focus, and they care, nominate them. And we have a great ceremony, award ceremony. The last couple of years it's in DC, back in May or June. I'll just say the spring. It's sometime in the spring. So nominations open February 7th, deadline March 15th. Please apply. Thank you for joining us. Any last minute questions? I'm happy to answer them, or stay on and just chat.
Thanks so much, Pam. I want to call out one comment, which is this is masterfully and beautifully designed, which I couldn't agree more with. You've made it really easy and accessible to see those standards, see those questions, and link it to other NLP resources. So you're also getting a ton of love in the chat as well. Jason says, I'm sure I will have questions, but seems like folks need to spend some time really diving into those documents. And as we've said before, we are going to package all of that up, and you'll receive all of those NLP resources along with any slides that have been shown today via email next week.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And don't forget, we have 2 more sessions in the afternoon. Yes. And please reach out if you have questions as you work through. Kate, you asked, how is NLP working with educators in states which are fighting news literacy instruction? I actually don't know of any states that are fighting against news literacy instruction. Most states that we hear are trying to embrace news literacy instruction. There are some that are fighting. Well, there's the censorship, but news literacy is not, again, because we're nonpartisan, right? We're teaching people how to evaluate information, not what to think. Alexa, have you heard of anything?
That would be a really excellent question for our educator engagement group. So yeah, let me think on that, because as you mentioned, yeah, there are a lot of states that are embracing news and media literacy education. There's only, not that many states that require it in terms of classroom learning. But let's, Pam and I can chat offline about that and maybe track down some additional resources.
Yeah. We got another question. They're all coming in
Mhm.
right at the end. So, can you
Yep.
offer some examples for student-friendly news sources? Yeah. Well, am I allowed to? I think I can. Yeah, I know we're not allowed to talk about what sources are credible for adults, but news for kids, I think, is slightly different. And I just want to put it out here. Disclaimer: I used to work for the newsletter, or I work for the Newsletters Project. I used to work for News-O-Matic. I used to write for them. It's the daily newspaper for kids. So I'm going to recommend them. They it's a paid subscription, but they vet all of their articles with a child psychologist. It's written for, in different lexicons, but mainly their main audience is grades 3 through 8. Although I think technically it's K through 8, but it's really 3 through 8. Um, Time for Kids, Scholastic News. Um, it's called News-O-Matic. That was for Mina. You were asking is News-O-Matic, and then PBS NewsHour. Yeah, I can put News-O-Matic. Actually, should I just put it in the questions? Oh, you got it. Yeah,
Just got to
News-O-Matic,
check.
PBS NewsHour. Okay, those are
Yeah.
great ones.
Yeah, to Pam's point, we at the News Literacy Project, we don't say which sources are good or which sources are bad or which sources you should trust or which sources you should avoid. We really try to focus on the importance of the standards of quality journalism and being able to judge the credibility of those news sources based on those standards and not just giving students a list of, well, here's who you should listen to and here's who you shouldn't. So our Be the Editor Checkology lesson is great for that. But I think for younger audiences, all of those resources, Pam, that you mentioned are great. And we did a lesson in collaboration with Time for Kids as well, which I dropped in the chat. Um, so I know there's probably going to be more questions. Pam, thank you so much. Everyone, please feel free to stay in touch. It's really valuable for us to also hear how you are incorporating news and media literacy into the classroom, how you are using these documents. So with that, I'd say we'll see you in the next session this afternoon, and one of which is being moderated by Pam. Um, Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your great questions and all of that participation in the chat. This has been really wonderful.